What's up YouTube? Welcome to my channel. I am making a bushcrafting knife in this video. It's a knife that needs to stand up to a lot of abuse. It needs to have a tough edge, good for a lot of heavy chopping and wood processing. So it's going to have a convex grind, which you'll see later in the video. I'm starting with 52-100 carbon steel, which is 160 thousandths thick, or about 3/16 of an inch. I traced the profile of the knife onto the piece of steel, and then I'm going to cut it out as good as I can with the angle grinder before profiling it on the belt grinder. Right here I'm doing a bit of draw filing. This helps to get everything straight that's supposed to be straight and square up the edges. I'm drilling my holes for the 1/4-inch pins and lanyard tube, and then it's time to give myself a center line to follow while I grind. To begin the bevel grinding, I'm using this homemade bevel jig. I use it when I start my bevels just to get a good flat spot about 1/2 inch tall that I can use to press up against the platen, and then I'll grind the rest of the bevel freehand, which gives me more control over the final shape. And then once I have the bevels ground in, I'm going to actually draw file them completely flat, because I'm not putting the convexing in until after heat treat, so the edge is staying a little bit thick. Therefore I can fine tune the geometry before heat treatment. And then I'm going to use a small file here to put in some jimping on the spine. After the jimping is all done, the knife is ready to take to heat treatment, which is going to be done by Metal-X Thermal Specialties. They're a business that heat treats all kinds of things, including knives, and they're really close to me, so I use them for my heat treating needs. This is after heat treatment. I've already started to clean up the knife a little bit, but it still has the oxide layer over the bevels. Because I draw filed these bevels, the finish grinding was pretty quick and easy. I just had to do a couple passes of 220 because the bevels were so flat. And then we'll also use a 220 belt to start putting in the convex. To put in a convex edge, I'm going to use the slack belt. When I start, I'm going to be placing the edge very close to the idler wheel because the belt has less give there, so it'll give me more control and I can get the geometry that I want. And then as we get closer to the final shape, I'll start using the center of the slack because it has more give, and that makes it easier to smooth everything out and have it look even in the end. And then when I'm just about done, I'm going to have the slack belt almost flat across the entire bevel, and I'm just going to rock the knife forward ever so slightly to smooth the convexing into the flat of the bevel that we've already put in before heat treat. And then once the geometry is correct, I'm going to use these Scotch-Brite belts to put on a nice surface finish. I'm cutting up some rosewood and black G10 for the handle. I'm gluing the black G10 liners onto the rosewood with some epoxy. Then I'm going to put a folded piece of paper in between the two scales and clamp them in my vise while it cures. The paper is so that I can easily separate them afterwards, just like this. I'm going to super glue the scales onto the blade and then use that as a guide for drilling the holes. I'm going to scribe the shape of the handle onto the scale. Then I'm going to break that scale off of the knife blade and start cutting up some pin material. Here I'm starting to shape the front of those handle scales. Here's the front of the scales fully finished. Okay, I skipped over the whole glue up, but the knife is now epoxied together and fully cured, so we're going to start shaping the handle. Here I'm using an old coarse file to actually put in some of the finer contours of the handle. And here's the handle fully shaped and sanded. After this, I'm going to put on my handle finish, which is True Oil. Now it's time to sharpen the blade. I did this with the slack belt, using a 400 grit belt to establish the edge, and followed by an 800 grit belt. Then a little bit of stropping. I was able to get it decently sharp in the end. And that's going to be this project all done. I made a leather sheath for the knife, which I didn't record, but I think it turned out pretty good. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments. This knife here is already sold, but if you are interested in anything I have to offer, you can check out my website, which is jackelliotblades.com. Thanks for watching the video.